Hi, good morning, and welcome to this week's episode of Global News Review. My name is Ola, and on this channel, we basically talk about personal finance, investing, and the economy and how it impacts your pockets. So, if that's something that is your fancy right now, and I believe it should be, then I welcome you to join the conversation, subscribe, hit notification button, and we would deliver on solid content to you. Now, on this particular program that we have every Saturday, 9 a.m. West African time, and we talk about the economy, global, African, and Nigerian economy and how it impacts your pocket. Now, the idea is that as much as we can have our internal strategies, blah, 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 the economy actually affects you. So it's important for you not be to wake up like literally, not to sleep. Important for you not to sleep on the bicycle, right? Because you definitely fall off. So let's get with it today. The first news that we're going to review today is about America. So I mean, it's been in the news a lot, and we just wanted to highlight what it means to everyone. Because America is like the bride of the world currently, the current bride, current reigning bride. It might change later, but current reigning bride. So basically, this bill that's Uncle D, as I call him, Uncle D has gotten through the Senate is basically what he has called the One Big Beautiful Bill. But it changes a lot of things and impacts people significantly in different ways. So there are different, of course, when a bill is passed, there are different lines that speak to different things, right? So some of the things that this bill addresses, number one, I think the one that impacts the big boys, the ones that have money, is that they increase the limit of or increase the limit they temporarily, I mean, it's important to highlight that, temporarily increased the limit of there's a tax deduction. It used to be 10,000 that it could that if your property value hit a certain amount, or yeah, you could call on it, and so they've increased that to 40,000. But it's just for a few years, though. It's not permanent, right? Some other things that they've done is that for middle income families, you could get some tax relief or tax refunds of up to 2,000 per child for childcare, right? Which is something that is good. On the other hand, they have removed funding for Medicaid and increased the money that is going into border control. Go figure. Right? But let me. One thing I like about Uncle D, he's quite consistent until he chooses to change his mind. So if he, and that's a very funny statement to make, but really he's actually being consistent with the things that he's particular about. Another thing that he said in his campaign was that he wasn't really about climate and all those kind of things. And yeah, they're reducing the amount of concessions that if you're in that EV space, you can have access to. Is debatable. Some people are saying that he's just leveling the playing ground, that EV companies had an advantage over regular gas powered vehicle companies, right? And so he's just leveling the playing ground. For some people, they are saying that it's a climate situation, right? You should encourage lower carbon emissions and stuff like that, and things that are pro climate, right? But it is what it is, and I'm sure we also in the news or in the soft news on X, the banter between Elon Musk and Uncle D, right? But why am I highlighting it? Um, these things that sound so far and so whatever actually have impact. Oh, well, the last one I wanted to mention is the debt ceiling. Right now, what's the debt ceiling? They okay. First of all, they increased the debt ceiling to $5 trillion. Now, what is the debt ceiling? If you've ever seen any news around government shutdown in America, then you have come across the debt ceiling some way or the other. But basically, what happens is that for prudence, there is like a ceiling on this is the maximum that the executive can borrow in a year, right? There's a cap. So once you hit that cap, you're supposed to stop borrowing and find other ways to be creative. So one of the things that, in fairness to Uncle Trump, he's trying to rejig the revenue base of the country, right? Trying to rebalance it through increase in tariffs, which other countries have done, but because his uncle America, we are complaining, right? So he's trying to rejig the economy. But while he's doing that, he now said, "Okay, guys, just give me a 5 trillion debt ceiling, right? So that I don't have to come and be begging the Congress every other day." Now, what literally happens is that once they hit that limit, right, there will be a government shutdown. What that means is that they don't have money to run the country. Now, imagine this is America. Oh, you will be complaining about small fry countries when they do some of these things. What is America we are talking about? And do you know how many times we have seen government shutdown in the news? So if you didn't understand that that was what it is, that is really what it is. They don't have money to fund the government. And so there's like always this power tussle, everybody just trying to say no, somebody saying yes, blah blah blah, and then it now comes to an agreement because of course the government cannot shut down. People need to be paid their salaries, so they will obviously have to increase it. So what he has just done here is that he has increased it, giving himself leeway, so he can play as much as he wants without having to come and beg or grovel to with the Congress and all. But basically, what does this thing mean, right? What is this whole bill thing about? For the easiest thing to say about how it impacts you is that if you're a middle income family, you would get your 2K sweet. Do you understand? The urgent 2K has arrived. Sweet, right? And of course, if you are a high income in a high income bracket, right, that your limit on your deductions, right, has increased for the next 5 years. You will enjoy additional 30K in your pocket, right? Um, but then, if you were accessing health care for free, Medicaid, if you used to get food stamps to support your family, there's going to be a problem. But I saw something through it. Basically, he was trying to reward everyone that was working. If you are trying to hook onto the system, he's trying to shake you off and trying to get you to say, come and work. If you are in the system of those working, we'll have perks for you, which we can see from the way Europe has panned out with support and people just becoming unnecessarily dependent. UK, we know how that can be. There is a case for it, but there needs to be a balance because there needs to be a human edge, right? Not everyone can afford some of the things. Not everyone would have that level of income. So it's quite worrisome on that part. But we also would see that when it unfolds or as it unfolds, as it's implemented, begin to see how some of these things will be countered by local laws and blah, 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 and all that. But it's important to note how these things impact you. And of course, on a bigger scale, right? If other countries see that Uncle America, because if you notice there's a trend when America starts doing something, other countries just begin to adopt it. If you see that there's a trend, you know that they can be coming for you. Yeah. So that's that on that. Hi everyone. I see someone saying hi. Hi Iolua. Thanks for joining always. Thank you so much. And if you're also watching, I can see some people. Please just say hi. And the next news out of America, out of the global space, is that Apple is actually considering either Anthropic or OpenAI to power Siri. Now, what does that even mean? First of all, if you know Apple, you know that Apple is so about their own ecosystem, so about building their own thing, so about I don't want a internal gish in my matter. Like we preserve our ecosystem. Everything is in our ecosystem. So this is even just they're even considering it is even a big deal in itself because it just shows that all this European laws coming to hit them and saying they must open up their system, open up access, making more whatever to people. You can't be everybody can't be forced to use your own ecosystem, blah blah blah. It means that they are foreseeing that it's going to be more and more in the future, and so they are trying to control their own narrative and make sure that they are not forced to do what they want to do or what they're not forced to do some of the things that they ordinarily would not want to do. Let it be on their own terms, right? So they're keeping their power in their hands. That's one. Now, the next thing is actually this whole Apple and Google conversation um, where Google used to pay Apple to have Google as the official search engine. The fact is that if people actually move to if they actually move to OpenAI or Claude, then you don't really need Google anymore. I'm just highlighting the changes that will come. Why? Because as investors, most of us will probably have Apple shares and Google shares. And if you don't know how to, I have a video on how to invest globally, regardless of where you are. And there are apps that can do this for you, right? So you can have access to these companies, right? And invest and benefit from them, right? But for The investor, the fact is you want to know what is happening in the company, and if the company is about to collapse so you can drop your money, or if the company is about to do something major so you can increase your investment, right? It's never always bad. So that's one thing we need to consider. Another thing that we also need to consider is that in this whole whatever, there's an Anthropic versus Open AI versus Google Gemini battle so far, and Apple has not been able to get into it, right? So if you're talking about AI, use of AI, Apple as a company on its own hasn't been able to successfully get into it. So if they are considering Anthropic, which is Claude, or OpenAI, that is ChatGPT, um, then it means that they are trying to jump into it, meaning on our own, our research hasn't broken through on this, but we are trying to make a leap to catch up, right? Which is also good. And so we found that once these whispers came into the market, the stock price moved by about 2%, right? Just on the back of this, they are considering, right? Why? Because it's good news, because everybody, Apple hasn't brought out anything interesting in recent times. When you come out with their new phone, everybody's looking and saying, what's special about this, really? So they have to come up with innovation there. You can almost say that they are somewhat struggling in terms on the innovation part, or it's not coming out as quickly as the market would want it to, even though the company and the brand is still extremely strong and they have like a massive moat around them that you can't touch. So what am I saying for the stock investors, for shareholders, potential shareholders? This is like good news, right? This is good whispers. Let me not call it news, because they're considering. You can now come out later and see that the deal fell through and the stock price will reverse. Yeah, that's how it happens. But it's also important for you to keep abreast of what's happening. And if you are listening, just say hi, hi. It's a rainy day in Lagos. And of course, if you don't know that these sessions are powered by the Money with Club, you can check us out www.themoneywithclub.com. Basically, we learn about investing, take action, we bring deals, show people how to access, like just answer all your money questions, and you are good. So moving on to African news. Oh, so this one, I was actually quite excited about it. So Namibia exports its first consignment of salt to Nigeria, actually. So Namibia sold salt to Nigeria. And the first thing that came to my mind was, doesn't Nigeria have salt? Why are we importing? Like, why exactly are we importing? And so I went to dig deeper. Apparently, the kind of salt that they produce in Namibia is so pure, very, very pure, that it is easier to use and convert for manufacturing and production and stuff like that. So it's a very niche, like high, beautiful product, blah, blah, blah. Right. And you might actually find, because I couldn't really find the data, that Nigeria actually imports that salt, that kind of salt from Europe and co. So that first consignment from Namibia is actually a big break for Africa as a whole, because now we are beginning to trade with each other. Now you would find that as more and more companies from Namibia begin to export to West Africa, or West Africa begins to export to Namibia, and we've done that. We've actually had people go en masse to go and distribute their products and test the market in Namibia from Nigeria. That one I know for a fact. To do that, what will happen one day? Yikes. Okay, I'm back. Let me switch on my backup so that it doesn't hang again. So what we will find over time is that even in going to a bank and say, I want to buy, trade directly with Namibia, and trading pair setup, because as trade increases, you now begin to hang supporting those trades. There's a Pan-African payment system that is also being worked through, and there's already a direct connection between East and West Africa. Guys, this AFCA FTA thingy that has seen so far, is we're still nowhere near there. Oh. We're still nowhere near there, but we are crawling slowly in the right direction, I dare say, because the financial infrastructure for trade is being built and is being passed across different sides of Africa. And then the trade is beginning to happen, right? So even though at first I was like, why is Nigeria importing salt? I realized that it's not salt like Dangote salt that we used to cook. It's not for production, right? And everyone in this ecosystem. Big ups, African Union, big government partners that are pushing for this AFCFTA thing to work. I know especially the guys in UNDP. We had a couple of them. You had someone that was, we have a member of the club that is a major part of this AFCFTA project and all, and we see that they are doing it is yielding slowly and surely. So well done to everyone in that ecosystem. And then if you have something to import or export, up, wake up, wake up, wake up. So now finally, just want to mention that we do have some freebies, right? Some products, some research that we did that we just thought to share for free. One of them is for Africans abroad, how Africans abroad took how 3 Africans abroad took control of their money before retirement. So basically, we found that a lot of people abroad, the major investment that they have is their real estate, their assets, the property they are living in. The property you are living in is like the worst thing to say you have an investment. Why? Because you can't cash out on that investment without being homeless. You get what I mean, right? It's an asset. It's an asset because you have that security, right? But in terms of the fact that you're putting so much money, not bringing you cash, it shouldn't be the major part of your portfolio. But we realize that for a lot of diasporans and people that have left Nigeria, if you ask them of their investment portfolio, it is their property, and it could be as much as 90%, if not 100. That means that's the only investment they have. Meanwhile, you're still paying mortgage on it. So what's your net worth, right? So we did this research and we pushed a case study just for people to be aware. So if it's something that it sticks to your head that download, the link will be in the description. You can check it out. Just find out what other people did to and secure their finances. Cash is always king. The final news. I said link in bio, right? Final news. FG has launched a 40 million blueprint ICT project to digitize 10 Nigerian universities. I was excited when I saw it, but like I wrote in the newsletter, and if you don't know, we have a newsletter. Let me see if the link is here. Substack, yeah. We have a newsletter, so if you're a reader also. Members of the club, you don't need it already. You're already in the tea, like in the center of the tea. But if you're out of the club, yeah, we have a newsletter. But what I wrote in it was that Nigeria, as they putting everything on is coming, but I use more bougie terms, right? But it's actually a good innovation. It's actually a good idea if implemented to the letter. Why? Because Nigeria's education system needs to jump. Like we can't afford what we are doing right now. We need to jump because we see it in hiring, quality of the hires, seeing the quality of the staff. It's almost like when you hire the staff, you now start, they should have learned in university. Like there's a lot of patience that goes into onboarding hires these days. Why? Because the educational system has problems, major problems. So this is going to, it's a pilot thing. The fact is that they're going to digitize the whole process, learning process, learning management, the whole lecturer part of it, processing results, blah, 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 like digitize the whole process. It is good, it is laudable, but we need lights. We need lights. We can't be having this rolling internet. Yeah. See that 5G? It needs to come and needs to enter everywhere. So, of course, in the whole process, I'm sure there will be some partnerships with telecoms to prioritize those areas, to have free access to internet, blah, 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 and all that. But the fact is that how many people can afford to have laptops in our government universities, right? So there's a lot that needs to go into deploying these things. So whilst it is exciting, we must start it, attempt to at least push through. But we are also hoping that this will be different, that there will be a lot of follow through, because it's like a 5 to 7 project for it to be impactful, right? So we wish Nigeria well, because we have an education problem, a significant one. I think secondary schools is even where the problem is right now. There's a gap. It starts from secondary schools and it needs to be fixed. But anyways, this is saying you are in that ecosystem and you have to this process. There's money to be made, one, and number two, there's value to create, two. and find that it is because every employer in Nigeria will thank you. Yeah. So I wish everyone a beautiful week ahead. Today we're having a hangout Money with Club. So follow me on my socials and you see the pictures later in the day or while it's yeah. Take care, everyone, and beautiful rest of the week. And don't forget, can't outsource your health and your finances. You always have to engage. No one can go to the gym on your behalf, and no one eats vegetables on your behalf, and you'll be healthy. It's the same way you can't outsource your finances. You always have to engage.